Alright, man, so we back with another video. Today we're gonna be giving y'all this ain't the first video on this channel, but it's gonna be one of the first. Now I was gonna put all the top 10s on the rank channel, but I wanted to have a dedicated music channel. I don't know if I'm gonna be putting reactions on here. I have a reaction channel, probably keep that over there. But y'all do want more videos on this channel, just like the video. Today we're gonna be doing the top 10 albums of 2026. Now we're gonna try to update this throughout the year. 3 months in, this is gonna be this one, part 1. 6 months in, halfway through the year, we're gonna be doing part 2. 9 months in, we're gonna be doing part 3. And then at the end of the year, we're gonna have a full total final list. So if y'all do want more, like the video. If y'all do want to see the tier list ranking pretty much every single album I've listened to so far this year, go watch that. But I tried not to put it in order because it wasn't that many albums that I really liked this year, or yeah. But today we're gonna be doing it, the top 10, gonna be more so that video, but in order. Y'all do want more, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff out the way. Let's hop into it. Alright, hopping into it. Now, when it comes to this, it was originally going to be a top 3. But because I am recording it late, we are going to include one album that came out in April. Simple as that. So, let's get into it. So, it's going to be more so a top 4 with honorable mentions. But it's going to be 10 albums, really more than 10. Where you can really say the first one is kind of an honorable mention. So, let's get into it. So, hopping straight into it. This is going to be just the album that came out this year. It's all a personal preference. Everybody had their different things that they factor into an album. I factor pretty much everything, personally. Some people don't care as much about replayability. Some people don't care as much about cohesiveness. Some people don't care about the message. I care about all that, personally. And that all just what encapsulates, in my opinion, a perfect album. So, let's get into it. Now, I'm not going to do, like, what I would rate the albums. I'm just going to rank them in order. Because, yeah, some of them I made, but some of them I'm not that high on to even be doing all that. So first things first, let's just go ahead and talk about it. Now I rank these pretty highly, but I don't know if I should really be ranking these because I don't listen to this genre as much as I listen to, I guess, rap, hip hop, R&B. So some of these you could argue is R&B, like one of them. But the first honorable mention, I'm gonna just talk about all of them. Gene by Yebba, Don't Come Home by Pimmy, and The Romantic by Bruno Mars. So if you've seen the album tier list, I had all 3 of these albums on there, and I kind of broke it down where I only really listened to Gene and Don't Come Home because they were on Drake albums, but also because people was actually hyping these up. So I was like, is this glaze or is it actually good? And I'm gonna be honest, Gene out of all 3 was probably the best one to me. I do think because it was kind of different than what I expected based off the songs I've heard from her on Drake album, except for I guess Die Trying. But for the most part, this is just a very versatile album. And it kind of starts to hit its stride in the halfway towards what I would personally rather. But because it's not really something I would personally like to listen to, and the fact that I actually did enjoy it, I kind of did just give it more bonus points for that. Then we have Don't Come Home from Penny, which is kind of more so just an R&B album. And it's, again, not really what I expected based off what I heard from the Drake album. But I guess that if you even listen to Pimmy's Dilemma, I guess that makes sense. But it was actually a pretty good album. It's just an okay R&B album, in my opinion. Nothing crazy, in my opinion. Then we have The Romantic, which is somebody I actually have liked his music in the past with Bruno Mars. But this one, in my opinion, if you like Bruno Mars music, you'll enjoy it for what it is. But even as a Bruno fan myself, it's as mid as a Bruno Mars album can be, personally. Like, Bruno got albums where he got 10 songs on it, and they all hits. And he's done that multiple times. This one, it kind of feel like he tried to go for that, but it's not different enough for me to really go out my way to really be like, this is such a great album. It's an okay album. I don't think it's holding up to really any of some of his best albums, even if you want to think of albums like the Silk Sonic joint. I don't think it's nowhere near as good as that, but it's an okay Bruno album, in my opinion. Now, that's the honorable mentions. We're going to talk about 8 albums now for the rest of the video that we're going to really rank in order, but let's get into it. Alright, so coming in at number 8, a lot of people are not going to be happy about this, but even as a huge A$AP Rocky fan, don't be dumb. This was a highly anticipated album with high peaks, but a pretty underwhelming album when comparing to his other projects due to overall consistency of the album. But in the grand scheme of it's pretty much still a good album in comparison to the rest of music dropping nowadays. Now, I will say, when I first did the description on how I feel about this album, I will say that is in comparison to the past couple years. But I do think 2026 is off to a very, very good start to albums, if I'm being honest. Like, for A$AP Rocky to really drop an album that was kind of underwhelming to me, but it's more so underwhelming because of his past catalog. That's just how good of a catalog A$AP Rocky kind of has. He has one of the more underrated ones. I just think this is it's a good album, but for A$AP Rocky's, I guess, quality, it's okay. It's kind of like Bruno. Bruno has much better albums than what he dropped, but yeah, let's keep moving. Now, coming in at number 7. Now, I talked about this on the video. Octane. Now, Octane, you could argue that there's some things about Don't Be Dumb that's better. Now, also, when it comes to Don't Be Dumb, I do want to mention, apparently there's a Diss 2 coming. Now, that album took a long time to come out. I didn't even talk about all the ins and outs of why the rollout was just off-putting for me as an A$AP Rocky fan, but I talked about that in the tier list. I'm not going to double down on it. When it comes to Octane, on the other hand, I feel like Don Toliver, his last album, he had kind of started going towards a way of where he's a feature artist. He was on a crazy run going into that album in terms of the features, the singles. So I think he kind of just was progressing as an artist so much. And I do think he had been doing pretty well with the features, but I don't think the features, the singles in the lead up to Octane was nowhere near to the same level as Hearthstone Psycho, for instance. But Octane is a much, much, much bigger album, which is insane to me. This album feels like it is the most cookie cutter TikTok music album he could have possibly made. But the thing I will give him credit for is there is effort on parts, on some of the, in terms of production. There's effort in terms of the cohesiveness, but I do think like there is a lot of potential here on this album for sure. When you think about the intro, like it was a direction we could have went here. He just didn't fall through with that. But with that being said, honestly, TikTok music, if it was good outside the production, pretty low effort, but some songs off this I just keep returning to, whether I like the album or not. But for most part, Don is just becoming an artist that is better on features, albums, underwhelm somehow, some way, but end of the day, extremely talented artist. And I do think of one thing that kind of goes into Don is that his voice is very, very unique. It is. And I do think that goes a long way in music. So I give Don a lot of stuff like that. Like, he is extremely talented, but half of it is his voice. I will give him that. But yeah, that comes in at number 7. He's just really good at making songs that you just replay. I will say that. But in terms of the album, it's not really for me, personally. And then next, now, this is the easiest overhated album that came out this year. I don't know what's going on with the discourse about this album, because this is not by any means a bad album. ADL. Now, I ain't gonna lie to Yeat fans, I feel it's kind of, I'm a contrarian, I ain't gonna lie. But when it comes to his fans, it really does feel like they trying to box him into what he was early when you think about Up To Me, which is still his best album in my opinion. When you think about, even like throughout the years, he has progressed as an artist. Like, it's just what it is. Like, when you think about Life from Up To Me, those are two completely different styles and sounds for the lane he in. And he kept progressing it. Now, 2093, I didn't like that one. That is one I will be honest and say the style was different, but I didn't like the execution. I gave him credit for trying something different. And he actually had a cohesive, unique album. But the execution wasn't it for me. But I do think that we were going somewhere. That was like when he really started to completely shift. Like, Life and Up To Me, those are different, but they're still somewhat in the same lane. 2093 is not even in the same lane in my opinion. That is like a whole different like subgenre, I would say. And then we have ADL, where this is like, in my opinion, his attempt at trying to make a his first cohesive start to finish actual album. I feel like a lot of the other times he was trying to make projects, he was trying to really experiment and stuff like that, but I don't think he was going in every single song being like, I need it to sound like this, I need it to all fit together like this is my vision. I feel like he had songs he was making and he was putting on the album. He maybe had visions or that he wanted to execute, and he was doing that. Maybe 2093, that's the only one you could really probably argue that for. This album, in my opinion, honestly, I unironically had the highest expectations for so far, except for one album based off the EP that dropped last year to set up this album. In my opinion, I thought the EP last year was better. Now, I will say, if you take a lot of songs off this album, put some of the songs off the EP on this album, it is going to be a drastically improved album. Like, one thing that really is a big letdown is because of the song ADL is Coming. The production on that song compared to the production we got throughout the album is just not the same. Now, there's some songs that have the same level or even higher production, I would argue, on his album, but it's not consistent. And I do think there are some songs where he does the execution, and then he'll make a song like the song with NBA Youngboy. Then he'll make a song like the song with Toliver, which in my opinion just don't really fit. Then you got a song like Naked. That is just terrible. So, like I said, if he just took some songs off, it'd be 10 times better. But the EP kind of set the expectations and bar a little too high. And I said that at the time when the EP came out, that how is he going to improve on this? I just didn't see how that was going to be possible. But after sitting, there's some genuine quality and effort all over this album, but would be drastically better if he took a couple songs off. And I can't get out my mind, even with how good the production is, the production quality of ADL is Coming, just for maybe 5 songs really live up to that standard. So, like I was just saying, ADL is Coming set a crazy, because it's like, if you even listen to the EP, that production on that EP is just a completely different level. And then you kind of is like, okay, so this is what we can expect for the album, and it really only like 5 songs on the album that's maybe even to that level. So I do think there's some parts of it that's a letdown in that aspect. But when people say this ain't the Yeat I want, this ain't the Yeat that I expected, I disagree with. I do think he should be able to try stuff and people not box him in, but he has to execute it better. That's what I would say. So yeah, I got it at 6, not top 5, but yeah. All right, then coming in at number 4, or am I tripping? Oh, coming in at number 5, we have 9 EP Before Emotions. Now, this is where he really was getting, like, I do think For Nothing, don't get me wrong, this is where, like, when Emotions came out, this showcased that really his EP is going to set the standard, set the bar for how good the album going to be. And I feel like that's for every person. Like, me, if you like Tumblr music the most, you probably like the EP the most. If you like Studio Attic the most, you probably like the EP the most. If you like For Nothing the most, you probably like that EP the most out of all the EPs. When it comes to Before Emotions, I thought this was the 3rd best EP that he dropped. Now, when it comes to the album, we're going to get into that. I thought that was the 3rd best album he dropped. Spoiler alert. But, in my opinion, I do think that this little era is kind of stamping him. I think we saw that he actually had good albums in terms of Studio Attic and For Nothing. He just needed to become more consistent, because where he had those 2 albums, he still had Tumblr music in between for me, which is just nowhere near the level of those 2 albums in my opinion. Where this EP, in my opinion, is really just stamping him as that Future, Thug, Carti, Uzi of this gen, where Future, Thug is a generation, then the next after that was Carti, Uzi for me, and then we got 9. Now, you could really argue the in-between was Yeat and Keem, but I don't know if they to that same level. But you could really argue it's kind of been a drop-off each level, where you come from Future, Thug, then it's a slight drop-off to Carti, Uzi, then it's a slight drop, or not a slight, it's a pretty big drop-off, and you go to Yeat and Keem, in my opinion. I don't know if there's really that big of a drop off from Yeat and Keem to 9, honestly. It may be another step up, but that's why I didn't really mention them. But that we've been waiting on in terms of consistency, dropping great, genuinely fun music, not really held to same standard as any album on this vid, with it being the only EP. But if these are the Lucy's from Emotions genuinely has incredible potential. So that's what I put when I originally heard, well, not originally, after sitting with it for a little while, that's what I put. Now, obviously, Emotions is out now, so we're going to be able to talk about it, but I had that at number 5. And then coming in at number 4, now this is an album that, honestly, we're going to talk about it. Casino by Baby Keem. Now, this was actually, I dropped a reaction for it. The first reaction to this was actually very good. The issue with this album for me is, I just don't really, the replay factor, sitting with it, I do think that first week it definitely had a good last. As the weeks went on, I listened to it significantly less. It just doesn't sit with me. I feel like the last time he had sat way longer with me. Honestly, Melodic Blue, that just lasted way longer with me. I don't know if it's because it's just so much good music coming out, but I do think there was an actual solid gap between him and Yeat and Kanye for that to sit with me a lot longer than that, and it just didn't. So I'm not saying it's a bad album at all, because I do think, honestly, when it comes to Baby Keem, it was a long overdue hiatus and actually delivered on the expectations for me, giving a genuinely consistent, versatile, cohesive album without being bloated, even with me not necessarily liking every song on the 11-song album. But the issue with me is just the replayability. Like I said, I do think versatility, cohesiveness, and consistency is important on the album. But replay value also is important on the album. I think all of those. Now, I would argue replay value is low-key the most important, because when people make music, when people make albums, they make it to be listened to. That is literally that is the entire point of music, for it to be listened to. If you're not really listening to it, it's just that the quality of it can't be that high, in my opinion. But yeah, I do think it is one of the, like I said, it was supposed to be top 3. It ended up going 4 because of that one little part. But yeah, you could really argue this one in 3, depending on how you feel about the 2 artists. I'm not gonna lie, but let's keep it moving. Then coming in at number 3, Emotions by Nine Vision. Now, honestly, as much as I did want to probably put it higher, it is impossible for it to be any higher than this. I'll say it right now. It is impossible. Impossible. But from the production to the effort he put in to have this album be cohesive, the consistency that this album has, and the more you listen, like, this is the thing I say about Baby Keem, I was trying to explain. When it comes to albums, genuinely, ridiculously amazing albums, those are the albums that when you sit with it, it gets better with time. Baby Keem, on the other hand, for me, it got worse and worse the more I listened to it. And I'm not saying it's a bad album at this point, but it did the opposite effect of what I kind of wanted it to do. When it comes to the albums that's really in the top 3, genuinely, the albums that's in the top 3, the opposite effect. These are albums that, rather, one of the albums I didn't have the craziest reaction to on the first listen, but it drastically improved with time. In Emotions, I did enjoy on the first listen to, and I didn't really hold it to a crazy high standard on the first listen, but it drastically is getting improved with time. Some of the songs I didn't really like, some of the Ray songs I'm not really a big fan of when it comes to Nine, but I actually do genuinely enjoy those songs on this album. I do think that this is the album that you could say, like Yeat, has too many songs. The issue is with Yeat is, his is 20 songs, and it may be about 8 songs that could have been left off. When it comes to Emotions, for me, it's 23 songs, where it's more songs than Yeat, and it's still only like 3 songs, in my opinion, that probably could have been left off. And the thing is with Yeat, I think Yeat EP really set a crazy high bar. The EP that Yeat dropped, better than any EP that Nine has ever dropped, in my opinion. And I think Nine dropped some crazy EPs. That's just that the quality of music Yeat had dropped last year. Nine, I do think the EP he dropped this year got some of the best songs that came out this year. But I ain't really sweating it that some of them songs not on here, because he just delivered on the album, in my opinion. So it is very tough. I do think Nine, from beat selection, I wouldn't say it's the best this year, but his producers, the production value of the album, I think it's some of the best we've had. And I do think there are some more, like, I guess, vulnerable songs that Nine has dropped on here. Like, when you think about the outro song, even just the last 3 songs, those are some of the most vulnerable songs that he probably has ever really made. Now, do I think it's the end on this album? No. Do I think it's a song on this album? No. Do I think that there's really anything on this album that really is making me say this is better than For Nothing? No. Now, if you want to compare it to Studio Attic, I think we can do that. I probably still rather Studio Attic, but I do think it is comparative. But For Nothing, I ain't gonna lie, For Nothing is really gonna be tough for him to top. I'm gonna keep it being. And like I said, when it comes to the EP, I do think that is a very focal point. I do think probably Studio Attic has the best EP. That's debatable, but that was earlier in his, I guess, life cycle of music. But I will say, I do think he is actually improving as an artist from, well, you could argue his producers are getting better, which it could be an argument against them. I don't know. But Nine Emotions comes in at number 3 on the list, and I'll probably give it a 7.5 or 8. Probably 8. I ain't even gonna lie at this point, because it is growing on me. I ain't gonna cap. Then, coming in at number 2 on the list. Now, the top 2 was very tough, because I'm gonna keep it being. I've just had less time to sit with number 1, but I have a lot to say when we get to the number 1 in terms of my thoughts. But coming in at number 2 is Fall Off. Now, if y'all remember, I did a J. Cole reaction to the album I did a J. Cole album tier list where even by then the album had risen. By now the album has risen even more. This is an album that genuinely, like when I'm saying with Baby Keem, first reaction, thoroughly enjoyed Baby Keem album more than the Fall Off first listen. Now by the time Baby Keem album came out, I did believe that the Fall Off was better than Baby Keem. But if we just talk about first reactions, I enjoyed Baby Keem joint thoroughly more. Now, is that because J. Cole joint can be a little bit more, not have the vibe that you kind of want at that time of the day? Probably. Could it be because it's just a much longer album? That may be the biggest part of it. But obviously with the 9 album being 23 songs, that's not the only reason. So I don't know. But the way that this album has grown on me is ridiculous. Probably comes in second due to recency bias, just over musical preference. Now I'm not gonna lie, is Kanye probably my favorite artist? Yes, I ain't even gonna lie. So that kind of just spoils number one for people that don't get it at this point. But J. Cole has always been one of my favorite artists, so that's besides the point. But this album has aged ridiculously. My issues are still the same. I'm not gonna lie. Some of the songs that are misses, I honestly probably think that this album has more misses than Nine's album. I'm not on cap. I probably would. But I do think as an album, I think that this is just better, personally. I'm still way too long. I enjoyed this 39 way more than 29. But the positives thoroughly outweigh the negatives on this album. Arguably Cole's best project he ever made, but it's also further proof that it's just impossible for J. Cole to make that 10 out of 10 album due to the flaws he's had his entire career. But it is also a perfect example of the insane growth he's had throughout his career as a rapper. That is literally the perfect way I would really describe this album. Like, calling it the Fall Off is actually such a bar, because this is a perfect representation of his growth. So, yeah, I do think the Fall Off is the second best album this year. It's going to really be tough for these two albums to really be topped throughout this year, in my opinion. Because at this point, the Fall Off is like an 8.5 for me. I'm a cue to bean. Probably still an 8, but probably is leaning there. It is leaning there. And I got it at number 2 on the 2026 albums. And then last but not least, we got Kanye with Bully. And as we get close to this joint, the only song, I'm going to say it right now, the only song I don't mess with is Circles. Now, he has changed it, took Don Toliver off, and now it's just his vocals, where I've talked about it. This is where it's really, how you feel about the AI usage of this album. Because if you don't know, a lot of this album, Kanye did not really perform. He re-recorded the vocals. But the original album, when it was AI, and it was just Kanye's voice AI'd on, a lot of those were literally, I keep forgetting who the other artist was. It was Don Toliver and another artist doing the vocals, and they were AIing Kanye on it. So, yeah, and what the real promo for this album was, this was going to be like the first album in a long time that Kanye fully produced himself. Now, it didn't end up being any of that. It really, the AI parts kind of got redone. And even the Kanye part, like a lot of the production isn't just Kanye. So, a lot of that ended up being capped. But what it ended up being at the end of the day was one of, if not the best Kanye album we've had in the last decade. Now, if you think about what happened in the last decade, I think The Life of Pablo came out in the last decade. I would probably say that is better. But I honestly do think this is up there, in my opinion, for me, when it comes to Kanye albums. The expectations were low, but just when you give up on Kanye, he returns to remind you that he's a one-of-one talent when it comes to making music. From pushing the genre forward with the use of AI, like the use of it or not, it's mostly here to stay. Now, I'm going to keep it a bean. The way that he used AI, I do probably prefer it more so in some ways, especially when it comes to the beat making. But in terms of like the vocals of it, I guess the final product of it, maybe that's not the AI, the Kanye problem. I do think the way that he was going to use it, in the way guys like Carti is using it, and we seen that Carti was finna have a song. He was supposed to have a song on music where it was him, Sway Lee, and Justin Bieber. The only reason it didn't end up being on there is because Justin Bieber, they tried to show to Justin Bieber to clear it, and Justin Bieber didn't even do the vocals for it. It was AI'd. The Justin Bieber part was complete AI, and that was gonna get released. That's scary, cause I ain't gonna lie, I'm really good at noticing AI. I had no clue. I'm gonna keep it being. I had heard the leak before I seen that report. I had no clue. That's actually genuinely scary in my opinion. So it's mostly here to stay, and honestly, the only fault I'd really give the album personally, outside the song Circles, by the way. With all that being said, for me, this is the best Kanye album since Life of Pablo, and only not gonna go further due to recency bias. Honestly, that's a fact. I do want to acknowledge Kanye is my GOAT, so there's definitely a bias or just a music bias to Kanye's style of music, but this is genuinely my album of the year so far, from the by far best production we've had on an album all year. If anybody wants to argue that, put those albums in the comments down below so I can get a better listen personally. To the overall consistency, where 16 songs where I genuinely love, 15 out of 16, but it ended up being 18. So it's 17 out of 18. I don't even know how I got to 15 out of 16, but it's 18 songs. And the one song I don't like, and I was gonna talk about Last Breath, but Last Breath is growing on me drastically, even though I don't even speak that language, but the production is actually fantastic. But if you want to count another song that I don't like, that's just a mid song though. It's just what it is. I don't like Last Breath, just not being for me. And then Circles, obviously. I don't think anybody has to really explain why that song is just not good. But I can understand people liking this in comparison to other attempts at songs like this. Like when you think about the Spanish speaking songs, when you think about the songs with Drake, and you think about songs that other artists try to do, Spanish speaking songs, I think Kanye had the best attempt by far. But I do think that's because of AI again, which is where I come back to, how do you feel about that? In my opinion, this album is just a perfect example of Kanye genius, from the creativity in the use of AI to the production, even down to the peaks of the album, with songs like this one here, All the Love, Punch Drunk, being clear callbacks to previous eras and perfect examples of Still Got It. So in my opinion, that's my album of the year. Those are my top 10 albums this year so far. Some of the albums didn't really get ranked fairly, I would probably say, because there is personal bias when it comes to stuff like A$AP Rocky. I just expect much better out of him. But then you got albums, I guess, also like Bruno Mars. I just expect a lot better out of him. But for the most part, that is my top 10. If y'all do want more, I was gonna say something crazy, but y'all do want more videos like this, just like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff out the way. No more talking. It's your boy Fitz. I'm out of here.
Tell them to bring me my money. Yeah!